Greetings, my name is Catherine Munoz. I'm a PhD student in the Autonomous University of Madrid, where I'm currently doing my PhD research about classical tradition in Panama. Today, I'm going to talk to you about Leonidas and the Panama history, and that's why I'm titled my presentation, Be a Good Panamanian, Be Like Leonidas. First, we're going to start with a brief history of Panama. Then the classical reception in Panama and its uses, and the part that is important for us, the national identity, and the uses of Leonidas in Belisario Porras, Guillermo Andreve, and the Guerra de Coto. For us to understand the importance and the use of Leonidas during the first year of Panama as a country, we need first to present a brief history of Panama. As we know, Panama is part of Central America and was discovered by the Spanish in 1501. It became part of Spain, and later it became independent from Spain and voluntarily joined Simón Bolívar's Gran Colombia as it was afraid of a possible reconquest. The relationship between Colombia and the Isthmus was never good, and in many times they tried to separate. Also, in this time, the United States started making commercial relationships with Colombia. In 1846, they signed a treaty that guaranteed the neutrality of the Isthmus for Colombia because Colombia knew that Panama had the idea and wanted to separate from them, and Colombia gave the United States the allowance of free transit, free tolls, special taxes for all of the merchandising and all the people that travel on Colombia. Obviously, these things wasn't like from the people in the Isthmus that they now see that the Americans were more important than the Panamanians. Along this came the discovery of the gold mines and the gold rush in California. That a group of United States citizens decided to build a railroad in Panama in order to get to California faster. And with this, all of the problems that it became known Panama as a place full of American citizens who felt superior to the native, as the Travels Chronicles show. This caused disturbances, and the Panamanian was uncomfortable with the continued presence and behavior, considering this a danger for the Isthmus. On 1880, Colombia succeeded in getting Count Ferdinand de Lesseps, the builder of the Suez Canal, to begin the construction of a canal in Panama. But for various reasons, including bribes and the civil war that had just started and the trial that Lesseps had, the canal came to an end, which left the door open for the United States to negotiate a treaty with Colombia to build a canal in the Isthmus. And later the treaty was signed in January in 1903, but rejected later by the Colombian people in August of that same year, as it was not considered advantageous for the Republic. On November 3, 1903, Panama becomes a republic, leaving behind 82 years of union with Colombia and looking forward to the future with the dream of seeing a canal built. On November 13, the United States formally recognized the Republic of Panama, and it has to be said that the United States helped Panama during the separation movement, only that it was not directly participating, but they helped in other ways. And with this made on November 18, the Republic had the permission to negotiate a treaty with the United States. This treaty is the Haibunawarila Treaty, which allowed the construction of a canal in Panama. This canal also allowed the construction of a Panama Canal Zone, which was 10 miles wide, with United States law being the canal perpetuity for all life, but all of this in Panamanian territory. Regarding the classical reception in Panama, we must point out that since 1903, the new republic looked for models to identify itself. The Panamanians knew that they were no longer Colombians and that they needed to know who they were. So they started to look out for models, and for them it was obvious to reach out those models in the antiquity. So in that way, the first buildings built in all of the city, as the National Theater, the City Hall that we see in the presentation, the schools, the ministry, the hospitals, all of them were made and following the models of antiquity, especially as the neoclassical movement. In that way, the Panamanians tried to understand themselves as they were Panamanians. The Republic made the same things that the old viceroyalties did, identify themselves with the Greco-Roman past to build the national state. And that way we can see the sculptures, paintings, like the Birth of the Republic by Roberto Lewis that is in the National Theater, the poems, all of these that highlight the individuality of the new republic, giving us a possible Panamanian national identity. At that level, that the national emblem, the coat of arms of Panama, has a Latin motto, Pro Mundi Beneficio. But we had a question. Why will the national identity is so important and how can it be related to the classical war? First of all, because the new republic is still information. It is deciding who they are. After 1903, years after that, they are realizing that all the benefits and securities and hopes that supposedly the High Treaty was going to bring, they never arrived. They realized that the Panama Canal Zone was in Panama, but it wasn't Panamanian because they weren't allowed to enter. They couldn't participate on the construction because the United States didn't allow it. The Panama was in the canal was in Panama, but wasn't Panamanian. So that's why we can trace and relay the problem of the national identity with the classics. And in that way, we can see the problem with the Panamanians. They don't feel comfortable with the Panama consuls and all the changes. The United States continues to intervene in the elections and decision of the Panama government, especially if we see and read the Article 136, in which the Constitution allowed, the Panamanian Constitution allowed the right for the United States to intervene in any part of Panama to reestablish public peace and constitutional order. As well, the Article 1 of the High Treaty that said that the United States guarantees and will maintain the independence of the Republic of Panama. With all of this, the first governments have a task and a problem reinforcing and trying to understand the Panamanian national identity. They needed to make the people to realize that they are Panamanians, that they live in Panama, that they need to have sovereignty on the place, on the country, and to love the country, and hence not tolerate all of the things that the United States has been causing in the country. In that way, the poems and the speeches, the address of the ministers of education, all of them carries a feeling of nationalism. They all try to teach the students how to be a good Panamanian, or to tell the student how to be or how to a good Panamanian behaves in public, and all of them are taught on examples on behalf of the classical world, and using figures as important as Socrates, Pericles, and Leonidas. The first mention of Leonidas is made by Guillermo Andreve in the 1920s. He was a well-known poet and a minister of education that served on several occasions and was member of the Liberal Party. For Andreve, Leonidas was an example for the students to follow. As a Minister of Education, he realized that the problem that the students have, that they didn't know how to express the love for the country. Most of it, that they needed obviously to fight the cultural presence of the United States in Panama, most because the cultural traditions, the festivities, and the language was too much practice and not much the Panamanian traditions. Also, it was a problem that that student doesn't know how to behave and doesn't know how to love the country, because they see all these political interventions that the United States did in the affairs, in the Panama affairs, such as the ones that happened in 1916, where the United States asked the national police to hand over its weapons, its long-range rifles, because according to them, that were the cause of the arrogance and bad behavior of the Panamanian police officers, because they didn't know how to behave. President Belisario Porras did not like this, and he didn't agree to the petition. But later, he had to admit that he was going to accept it. Most of it because United States, the government of the United States sent memos to all the banks in in the states, so they could not lend money to Panama. The president Belisario Porras didn't have any other choice to agree to the petition and to give all the weapons, and this was understood for all the citizens of Panama as a blow to the national pride. This problem is what Guillermo Andreve is seeing, and that's why he's so worried about the national identity and the formation of a good citizen. In that way, we can understand in this speech, Amor a la Patria, Love for the Country, that he expresses the idea of Panamanian patriotism and nationalism, saying that the Panamanian has the culture of the Athenian, the courage of the Roman, and the heroism that is compared to the one of the Spartan people. In that same way, in the same speech, we can also notice Andreves' annoyance and the importance that he gives to the national identity, and that he links the national Panamanian identity to ancient history, as well as the past image. We can also see in the same speech that he also talks about Leonidas, and he understands that the country is the most important thing, that the student and the citizens, all of them have to respect where they live, that the country is important, that it guards the most noble hopes the families, and that a citizen must be willing to sacrifice everything in it. Also, as we see, he mentions it as they see that the homeland or motherland condenses all the good. All the things good are on my country. And in that way, he said that we can understand that same feelings, that same love for the country, for the homeland, is what led Leonidas to sacrifice himself. So in that way, the students, the ones that are addressed this speech, must do and understand the same. Leonidas also was used by of other persons like Belisario Porras, who was later 3 times elected president when Panama became a country. But in this time, during the time when Panama was part of Colombia in 1888, he addressed a speech in the city council meeting on commemoration of the independence of Panama from Spain. In this speech, he exclaims how wonderful and how epic it was, the independence of Panama from Spain, and that the Panamanians that fought on that independence were as brave as Leonidas and as brave as the 300 brave Spartans that were in the Thermopylae. But of all of the uses I mentioned and reference to Leonidas during the Panama history, the most important and the most interesting are during 1921, during a conflict or a civil or a war named Guerra de Coto or Coto War. That was a border conflict between Costa Rica and Panama that took place on February 21 and March 5 of 1921, where Costa Rica invaded Pueblo Nuevo de Coto. On the map on the right, we see the boundary settled by the Lubeda War in 1900. The one in the middle, the boundary settled by the White War in 1914. And the one on the right are the current limits made by the treaty Chandy Fernandez in 1941. The problem appeared later in 1904 when Panama declared its first constitution. Costa Rica decided that they were no longer going to continue following the rules of the Lubed Award, and both parties decided to end the dispute by naming Edward White, President of the Supreme Court of Justice of the United States, as an arbitrator. Judge White in 1914, by the White Award, decided and noted that Lubed had exceeded its limits and declared that Panama needed to move out of Costa Rican territories. But Panama did not follow the White Award, continued to live there, just because and they understood that Judge White was ruling in favor of Costa Rica. Until 1914, the Costa Ricans didn't try to take the region until February 1921, when they decided to invade Pueblo Nuevo de Coto. At once, when Panama find out what was happening, the Panamanians, full of patriotic nationalism, heroism, and love for the country, they went to President Belisario Porras, who we already talked about, for to ask him what Panama was going to do. So Porras decided to go to war, arm every citizen between 18 and 40 years old to go to Costa Rica to defend the territory. This war ended on March 4, 1921, once the United States intervened to ensure the citizens, the United States citizens, the American citizens living in this area. In addition, also to protect their companies, And the United States said that they needed to protect the canal because this was going to affect the operation. All of this under the Article 136 of the Constitution, that they say that they needed to restore public order in the country. The end of this is that Panama loses the region, but it's very interesting to see and to read the news about La Guerra de Coto, because everyone knows what's happening, and everyone is very surprised that a small country with a canal that doesn't have an army has decided to go to a country, to their neighbor country, to fight a piece of land. And that's why I present you a newspaper, La Reforma Social, that is a magazine published in the United States by a Venezuelan, by a poet, a Venezuelan poet, Jacinto Lopez, where he mocks President Belisario Porras, and he mocks about his decision to go to war against Costa Rica. And above all, he said that how can it be possible that Belisario Porras believe that he can be victorious as Leonidas was. To which the newspaper, the Panamanian newspaper La Defensa, answers that perhaps President Porras might be very excited about Leonidas and the Thermopylae Gorge, but that with the few resources that they have, they are winning the war, which also implies, and if we read the other speeches and the other addresses, and the call to arms and all this nationalism sentiment of all these citizens, we can admit that all of these Panamanians saw Leonidas as an example of bravery. During this time, we also had an example of the different species that use Leonidas as an example of courage, such as this article of the periódico newspaper La Defensa, the return of General Quintero, a speech made by the President of the Republic, Belisario Porras, where Belisario Porras compares the head of the Panamanian Army, General Manuel Quintero Villarreal, as the same person on the same level as Leonidas, and also as important as Leonidas because he refers and he talks about General Quintero as a descendant and therefore as a member of the same lineage of Leonidas. And also it's nice and it's important to note as these similarities, that like both of them led an army without knowing that they will win. On another occasion, also, General Quintero was compared to Leonidas upon his return from Coro, where the Panamanian citizens welcomed him and saluted him, and told him that they really appreciate all of his courage and dedication to the homeland on a foreign country, on Costa Rica, and that he will be always remembered by his fellow citizens, and that he should be feel very proud, knowing that he will be as remembered as Leonidas was, or even more because Leonidas didn't survive and that he really survived, and that he can continue to show that pride and to show that national that is so important to the Panamanians to have. But nonetheless, it is still compared to Leonidas, and this is obviously the part that is important for us. We can conclude that the use and the importance of Leonidas made by the different poets and politicians in Panama history in the first decades, all of them used Leonidas as a way to teach the Panamanian students how to behave, how to be brave, and how to love the country most because the problem with the president of the United States. Thank you for listening to this presentation.